Hey guys, tonight we're leaving behind electricity, vaccines, and soft pillows, and slipping into a time where your first blanket is someone's torn apron, and your first breath is laced with smoke. You've just been born into the Middle Ages, and let's be honest, your odds aren't great. You arrive screaming, lungs shocked by cold air and the smell of sheep. The floor is dirt, the roof leaks, and the midwife looks more tired than relieved. Still, you're here, small, squirmy, alive. Your mother is barely conscious, whispering to the Virgin for protection, not celebration. Protection, because the next few days will decide whether you stay in this world or not. She kisses your forehead like it might be the last time. Around you, the world doesn't pause. Chickens still fight in the corner. A neighbor yells about stolen eggs. Someone drops a pot and curses. Your father walks out to tell no one in particular that you're a girl. You are not the center of anyone's universe. You are not destiny. You are an obligation wrapped in cotton and sweat. But still, you are. They name you before nightfall. Quick, before fever or fate takes you. A splash of holy water and a name muttered over your head ties you to God. If not to safety, then at least to something bigger. Your first days are full of noise, the bleat of goats, the hiss of firewood too green to burn, the mutter of grown-ups who already expect too much from you. You sleep in a corner of the only bed. You share your blankets with lice. And when it rains, your mother shifts your cradles so the drip from the ceiling misses your face. Quirky tidbit. In some villages, families would tuck iron nails under an infant's mattress to ward off fairies. You've got 3, probably rusted. But hey, magic's magic. You cry, and no one rushes. Your mother feeds you when she can. Your siblings ignore you unless they're told to rock the cradle. The world is not unkind, it's just busy surviving. By age 4, you've seen more death than joy. And yet, you've learned to hum, to squat beside frogs, to whisper secrets to your doll made of straw. You don't know what rich is. You only know warmth when it happens. And right now, that's enough. By the time you can really run, you're also expected to work. There's no such thing as childhood the way modern minds imagine it. No toy chests. No soft schedules filled with music lessons and carefully supervised play dates. No, for you, growing up is less about becoming and more about becoming useful. You don't just play house, you learn it in real time from women who've done it their whole lives with hands that crack open from winter wind and scalding water. You rise before the sun now. Someone gives you a task. Fetch kindling, shoo the chickens, scrape the soot from the pot. And you do it without much question. Not because you're obedient, but because you've seen what happens when you're not. A flick of your mother's switch, maybe. Or worse, your father's belt. Your fingers aren't quite dexterous yet, but that doesn't matter. You practice spinning wool until the thread breaks less often. You spill flour once, only once. After that, you learn to balance a heavy bowl like your life depends on it. Because it sort of does. There's no school unless you're a boy from a family with enough silver to bribe a priest into caring about your Latin conjugations. You, however, will be educated in the way of every other girl through your mother's voice, your grandmother's hands, and your older sister's sharp looks when you get something wrong. You learn quickly, not because anyone praises you, there's little time for that, but because your survival depends on it. You memorize the feel of a clean pot, the quiet signs of a sick goat, the ratio of herbs that will soothe a bellyache, and the one that will accidentally keep a man sleepy and less angry. Historians still argue whether medieval girls internalized these lessons with resentment or pride. You're not sure either, you just do them. Maybe that is pride, or maybe it's just muscle memory by now. You discover that women don't own things, but they keep everything running and everyone alive. You sense that power isn't always loud. Sometimes it just means knowing how to stretch half a turnip into soup and still leave enough for the next day. There's a rhythm to this life. Draw water, grind grain, patch fabric, sing softly while darning socks so the baby stays calm. You find peace in the repetition sometimes, the same way people today might lose themselves in podcasts or rain sounds. Still, even here, even now, there's an unspoken countdown ticking. You're only 7, maybe 8, but the way people speak around you is changing. That woman from the next farm over, she stared at you for too long, whispered something to your mother. Your mother said nothing, but her hands got very still. There's a weight beginning to settle on your back. Not physical, not yet, but emotional, like you're walking toward a threshold you can't name, and everyone knows it but you. At night, while combing lice from your sister's scalp, you hear stories, half prayer, half warning, about girls who got too bold, about witches caught in the woods, about a woman who once said no and vanished. And yet, lightness lives here too. In the stolen moments, the quick jokes shared behind laundry lines, the ridiculous songs you sing while fetching water, the way the neighbor girl sticks out her tongue when the priest turns his back. One quirky bit. You're probably given a little cloth charm to wear around your neck, something sewn with a prayer inside. Protection against everything from illness to the evil eye. Does it work? Who knows? But you fiddle with it when nervous, and it feels like a small secret strength. That counts for something. The older you get, the more you notice the differences between you and the boys. They climb trees and shout at pigs and run bare-chested in summer. You keep your hair braided and your head down. If your tunic slips too far or your laugh gets too loud, you hear about it. You start to see how the world isn't just hard. It's watching you, weighing your body, your walk, your silence. The way grown men look at you now is different, not kind, not cruel, just assessing. Your mother begins to teach you the next layer of survival, how to serve, how to bend, how to disappear without vanishing. These aren't things she says aloud, but she shows you when she keeps her voice gentle, even while seething. When she pockets extra bread for a neighbor who'll return the favor someday. When she speaks to the priest in that special tone, the one that means nothing, but smooths everything over. It's hard not to see the cracks, to wonder why the men get the wine and the women get the work, why no one ever seems to leave, but some girls disappear for weeks and come back quieter than before. Still, your life marches forward. Your arms get stronger. Your mind gets sharper. You learn to make cheese, to gut fish, to sense when someone is lying. You laugh when you shouldn't. You cry when no one's looking. And then, one day, you wake up and notice something different. Something red. Something that means you've crossed into a place there's no returning from. Not in this world. Your mother sees the stain on your linens and doesn't weep, doesn't smile. She just nods, like she's been expecting this ghost all along. Puberty doesn't feel like a beginning. It feels like a countdown. Your body changes, and the village changes with it. People look at you differently now. The baker's wife watches you walk past with pursed lips. The old man who used to ruffle your hair no longer meets your eyes. And your own father grows quiet around you, not in awe or pride, but like you've suddenly become difficult to place. You've started bleeding monthly, and that means you're ready. Ready for what exactly? Oh, just the end of your autonomy. Not that you ever had much to begin with. You're 12, maybe 13, maybe 14. No one's keeping close track. You're not given a birthday cake. You're given a silence that settles over the family like smoke. Your mother begins brushing your hair more carefully. She teaches you how to avoid eye contact in the market, how to walk with your knees slightly bent so you don't look too proud. You don't understand it fully yet, but you feel it coming. The change, the deal, the trade. Historians still argue whether girls of this age were truly prepared for what was coming or simply resigned. Either way, the result is the same. Your name is whispered at other families' hearths. Someone's father rides over to discuss arrangements, and one day, your mother takes your hand too gently and says there's someone coming to meet you. This is your betrothal. He's older, of course. They always are. He has a beard. Maybe he's 30. Maybe older. He smells faintly of horses and onions. He doesn't speak much to you, just to your father. He looks at your face like he's assessing a cow. You don't say anything. You know better. Your dowry isn't gold or land. It's 3 goats, a half barrel of barley, and a length of dyed wool your aunt wove last winter. It's enough. You are, in the most literal sense, a transaction. Still, there's a strange pride in the air. Your parents aren't cruel. They see this as your moment, a step toward your security. After all, what's the alternative? Spinsterhood, servitude, worse? You try to feel proud, too. It doesn't quite stick. There's a feast, small and dusty. Someone gifts you a comb. Another offers bread shaped like a dove. The priest says a few words that sound like blessings but feel like goodbyes. You sleep in your mother's bed one last time. She braids your hair tight and whispers prayers under her breath. Then, in the early dawn, you're bundled onto a cart with a bag of clothes and jars of preserves, and you rattle away from everything you've ever known. You don't cry. Not yet. Not until the cart turns past the chapel and the wind hits your face, and it feels like the sky itself has changed. Your new home is bigger, not grand, but more rooms, more shadows. Your husband, yes, that's what he is now, shows you around like he's giving a tour of your cage. You have a bed, a kitchen space, a single window. There's a dog who doesn't like you yet, and a maid who does. They all wait. Wait for you to adjust. Wait for you to accept. Wait for you to start being the thing they've bought. Quirky tidbit. You're gifted a small silver brooch by your new mother-in-law, shaped like a swan. It's lovely. It's also a test. If you lose it or don't wear it often enough, someone will say you're ungrateful. Your first meal there feels like a performance. You eat slowly, carefully. You nod at all the right moments. Your husband doesn't speak much, but you feel his gaze. He's waiting too. Not for your opinion, never that, but for your obedience. That night, you lie in a bed that doesn't smell like you. The sheets are stiff. The silence is heavy. Your heart beats loud enough to hear, and maybe, just maybe, you understand why some girls run into the forest and never come back. But you stay. You lie still. You survive. Over the next few weeks, You learn your duties. You rise before your husband. You stoke the fire. You feed the animals. You knead dough until your wrists ache. You learn where he likes his cloak hung and which food makes him belch. You start to forget how your mother smelled. You forget your sister's laugh. You get good at forgetting. Historians like to describe marriage in medieval Europe as a social contract, which, sure, if contracts could bleed. You know now what's expected of you. The next step is motherhood. Not eventually, not hopefully, immediately. You're no longer a daughter, you're a vessel. You can feel the fear building like smoke in your lungs. Not of the man, necessarily, but of what your body will be asked to do, what it might lose. You find yourself praying, not because you're especially devout, but because it's something to do with your hands when they tremble. And in the dark, when the door creaks and he enters, you learn to be still. You learn that some silences are louder than screams, and that you are expected to make no sound at all. The wedding itself is already a blur, a flutter of fabric and forced smiles. But that first week after, that's when it becomes real. You wake in a bed that is no longer yours, in a house that bears no memory of you. Your name is stitched into no linens, etched into no walls, spoken only when someone needs something. You are a stranger in your own skin, and you can't quite remember what your laughter sounded like before the silence settled in. Marriage for you doesn't come with a honeymoon. It comes with duties, expectations, a checklist whispered in the corridor by the housekeeper and recited again by your mother-in-law with a raised eyebrow and too tight lips. Keep the fire going, mind the chickens, brew beer if you can, and above all, get with child quickly. That's the only job that really matters. You're told to look to the Virgin Mary as your example, chaste, obedient, and miraculously maternal. No pressure. Your husband doesn't hurt you, not with fists. He doesn't have to. His power is structural, legal, divine, according to the church. When he speaks, others listen. When you speak, it's called nagging. You try to do things right. You bake bread, sew linens, and learn to smile when men compliment your manners, which means your silence. You try to become what they want, a reflection, a role, a pleasing echo. And you bleed again, but not the monthly kind. This time, it doesn't stop for hours. Your mother-in-law frowns, mutters something about weak girls and stronger wombs. You're sent to lie down, but no one brings you anything. Later, they feed you broth. Not with love, with impatience. Quirky fact, some women wore charms with dried toad parts sewn inside, a supposed fertility aid. You're given one, and it dangles from your shift like a threat dressed as hope. You miss your mother, or rather, you miss the idea of her. You can't picture her face anymore, just the shape of her back as she stirred the pot. It's funny what the memory keeps. Historians still debate how much say women had in running the household. It depended, of course, on wealth, location, the husband's personality. But you're allowed to manage the servants and keep the pantry stocked. That's it. Anything else is overstepping. You notice something else too. The rules don't apply equally. Your neighbor's husband has a mistress, and nobody says a word. If you are caught even speaking too warmly to another man, the gossip alone would drown you. You begin to understand how much of your world is about control. Your body is no longer your own. It's a project, a tool, a shrine under constant inspection. You track your cycles with herbs and whispers. You touch your belly and wonder if something's growing there or just aching from hunger. And then one day, your suspicions are confirmed. The maid smells it first. She smiles. It's not unkind, just resigned. You've missed your courses. The village midwife is sent for, and she touches your wrist like a fortune teller. You're with child, she says. And suddenly, everyone treats you like a sacred object, but not in the good way. Not like a goddess, more like a fragile heirloom that better not break. You're given less work, but more scrutiny. Every step you take is watched, every bite you eat. You're praised when quiet, scolded if you cry. You've never been more exhausted. The baby stirs inside you like a second self, one that demands and shifts and grows while you shrink. You try to keep food down, you fail. You try to sleep, you can't. You try to smile. That's the only one that works. One night, you wake to sharp pain. You don't scream. You're not allowed to scream, but you cry, and the maid hears. And soon, the midwife is there, with hot cloths and boiling water, and prayers mumbled between commands. It's early, too early. The baby arrives in silence. You don't. You scream then, but no one tells you to hush. The silence in the room has shifted. Even the fire seems to dim. They clean you. They bury the baby in the churchyard the next morning. There's no marker. You don't ask for one. You wouldn't get it if you did. Your husband tells you, try again. Not unkindly, just mechanically. And so, you begin again. Historians still argue whether medieval women experienced motherhood as joy or duty. Probably both. Probably neither. Probably something quieter than words. You begin again. You bleed again. You hope again. You bury again. And still, you survive. The next one lives. Barely. A boy. There's celebration of a sort. Your mother-in-law smiles for the first time. Your husband pats your head like you're a dog that finally fetched the right stick. You don't feel proud, but you feel something, like purpose. Like you bought yourself time. You press your son to your chest and listen to him breathe. You pray he lives. You pray he never knows what this cost you. But you don't say it aloud. You're a wife now, a mother. You're no longer allowed to speak about the pain. You're barely past the aches of childbirth before the rhythm of life reclaims you. The baby wails in the night, a sound like a crooked blade scraping across your thoughts. You learn the difference between his hunger cries and his fever cries. You never imagined there were so many kinds. Your body, meanwhile, has declared mutiny. Your back throbs from labor and laundry. Your hands are cracked from soap made with ash and pig fat. Your breasts ache from feeding, leaking through the cloth you stuff into your bodice. And still, no one offers relief, just advice. You should be grateful, they say. Some women can't have children. The days blur. You boil laundry, pound roots for medicine, stitch together what remains of your own strength. If you pause long enough to sit, someone finds you a task. If you look out of the window too long, they ask if you're lacking in gratitude. Once a week, you walk to church with your head down. The priest tells you to be obedient, to be modest, to be grateful for God's plan, even if it seems cruel. You kneel, not because you believe him, but because there's nowhere else to go. A fringe tidbit. In some towns, women who spoke out of turn were punished by being made to wear iron scold's bridles, metal cages strapped to their heads with plates shoved into their mouths to keep them from talking. You don't get one, you just get shushed. Often, you find companionship where you can. a neighbor whose baby also won't sleep, a baker's wife who sneaks you an extra crust when your pantry runs low. Sometimes you gather near the well, where women trade recipes and rumors and sighs. It's the closest thing you have to freedom, talking without men nearby, laughing in half whispers. Historians still argue whether these moments, these tiny acts of resistance and connection, amounted to a true female culture or were simply survival tactics. Either way, you cling to them like thread on a worn-out hem. Your husband starts spending more nights away, at the tavern, or supposedly helping with harvest. You're not sure which. You don't ask. You've learned not to. When he does return, he expects things in order, the house clean, the baby quiet, the food hot. If not, you're treated to silence, or worse, correction. One night, he pushes you. Not hard, but not gently either, just enough to remind you who owns the space between you. You don't fall, but you do fold. Inside, there's no one to tell, no one who would care. The priest would ask what you did to provoke it. The neighbors would shift their eyes and whisper behind closed shutters. You hide the bruise with herbs and hope. You hear of another woman in the next village, Marguerite, they say, who was locked away by her husband for 2 years after he claimed she was unfaithful. No trial, no proof, just power and suspicion. They say the Pope himself had to intervene. You wonder what Marguerite dreamed about in the dark. Meanwhile, your second pregnancy creeps in like an echo. You feel the sickness before the joy. You try to hope anyway. Maybe a girl this time. Maybe a little softness in the world. But when the baby is born, the midwife doesn't speak. She just wraps the body tight and leaves it near the door. You bury this one under a tree, not the churchyard. That spot is for souls with names, apparently. You plant rosemary and whisper her name into the dirt. No one hears it but the roots. Still, you survive. You survive again. You become a quiet expert in endurance, in timing the fire so the bread rises properly, in latching the baby in darkness, in recognizing the look that means it's safer not to speak. You catch your reflection once in a bowl of water. You stare. The girl from before is gone. In her place is someone else, someone more hollow, perhaps, but also harder to break. You trade stories with a woman who brews ale. She tells you she once dreamed of being a midwife, but her uncle said that was a witch's trade. So now she measures barley and prays over the foam. You nod, and don't say that you dreamed of teaching letters, of traveling, of walking beyond the village without fear or permission. You tuck that dream away. With the rosemary, there's a strange calm that settles, eventually. A routine. You know every creak of the floorboards, every season by the ache in your joints. You begin to recognize small blessings. The baby's laughter, the warmth of wool fresh from the fire, the silence when it isn't hostile. One evening, your son toddles across the room and hands you a crooked wildflower. It's half crushed, and he's proud as a king. You smile without faking it. That counts for something. Fringe fact: some villages believed babies born during thunderstorms would grow up cursed or blessed, depending on which grandmother you asked. Your third child arrives in a storm. You don't tell anyone. You just hold her close and whisper, "You'll be whatever you want." Historians still argue whether women in the Middle Ages had hope, but you know better. Hope wasn't a luxury, it was a tool, a sharp, stubborn seed planted in dry ground. You don't water it with faith, you water it with defiance. Your days stretch on. You get better at managing the ache, at finding softness in the scraps. And slowly, despite everything, you build a life, not the one you asked for, but one that holds. At night, when the children are asleep and the fire is low, you sit by the window and hum old songs, songs your mother sang, though you no longer remember the words. Just the rhythm, just the memory of being held. You've learned the secret no one speaks aloud. You are not weak because you endure. You endure because no one taught you how to give up. Section 6. The days start to blur together, but in a way that becomes oddly comforting. You wake, you work, you sleep, if the baby allows it. The sun rises behind the same hill, and you can measure the seasons by how the wind moves through the trees outside your cottage. Your third child survives. A daughter. She grows with a fierce, observant quietness. She watches you the way animals watch the sky, half wonder, half warning. She speaks early, sings often, and clings to your skirts like ivy. You name her after a saint, but you think of her as your second breath. Some days, you worry about her future more than you worry about your own, because you know what's coming. You've lived it. Marriage before the bones finish growing. Childbirth before the dreams begin forming. Expectations tied to her hips like chains. And still, you hope she'll get lucky, that she'll marry a kind man, that she'll survive, that she'll sing. Fringe tidbit. In some medieval households, girls as young as 7 were betrothed, promised to men 3 times their age, not for love, but for land, politics, and a father's favor. You mend her little dress while she plays in the corner. Stitch by stitch, you wonder if the thread can hold more than cloth. Maybe it can hold prayers or spells. You don't believe in magic, not really, but sometimes you pretend, just in case the saints are tired of listening. And yet, not everything is shadows and weight. On some days, there's joy. You laugh when the goat escapes and races into the baker's yard. You dance in the rain with your daughter when no one's watching. You and your neighbor trade bread for onions and gossip for stories. You remember a part of yourself that used to smile before being asked to justify it. Your husband grows older, not softer. His anger no longer burns. It simmers, controlled, measured, quiet, in a way that's more dangerous than before. You learn to anticipate it like a change in weather. And still, you stay. Because leaving isn't a choice. Not with children, not without land, not in this time. Historians still argue whether women ever truly had options back then, whether convents, widowhood, or rare inheritances counted as real agency, or were just different cages. You try not to think about it too much. Thinking too far ahead is like looking at the sun. It'll burn something inside you. Your oldest son is now nearly a man. You watch the village priest teach him letters while your daughter plays with sticks. You're proud of him, but quietly uneasy. You've seen what happens when boys become men in a world that hands them power like a birthright. You hope he chooses gentleness. You hope he doesn't forget your hands, the ones that raised him, fed him, held him through fevers. You've stopped attending certain feast days. The crowds exhaust you. The gossip drains you. And the sermons, well, you've heard them all before. Obey your husband. Suffer with grace. Rejoice in your duty. You'd like to see the priest give birth in the dirt behind a stable and still preach about grace. But you still find faith, not in the church, but in the patterns. The way seeds know when to sprout, the way babies reach for warmth, the way some women leave crusts of bread on windowsills for others to find. It's not divine, but it's sacred. There's a story passed around among the village women, quietly, in kitchens and over laundry lines, about a noble woman who escaped her cruel husband by faking her own death. They say she lives in a cloister now, pretending to be mute so no one recognizes her. You wonder if it's true. You wonder what she dreams about. One evening, as you sit by the hearth, your daughter climbs into your lap and places your hand on her heart. "This," she says, "is where you live now." You blink back tears and pull her close. You don't know where she heard that. Maybe she made it up. Maybe it's just true. That night, you find an old book hidden in the rafters. You can't read all the words your mother taught you a little long ago, but some come back. You whisper them aloud as if invoking a spell, not to change the world, just to remember that you once had a voice. You teach your daughter how to braid, how to dry herbs, how to knead dough with her palms, not just her fingers. These lessons matter more than she knows. Survival isn't inherited, it's taught in soft repetitions and flower-dusted songs. Fringe fact, women were the primary brewers of ale in many medieval villages. Called alewives, they often wore tall hats and worked with herbs like gruit, until beer guilds emerged and shut most of them out. You're not an alewife, but you remember the smell of your neighbor's brew. Sharp, sour, honest. One winter, a traveling friar comes through the village. He preaches fire and punishment from atop a crate, warning that women's souls weigh heavier with sin, that we are temptresses by birthright. Your daughter asks what he means. You tell her he's wrong. You wonder how many women believed him anyway. You wonder how many still do. You start keeping a journal, not a real one, just scraps of parchment hidden behind the beams. You write memories, recipes, things you want your daughter to know when you're no longer here, things you're afraid history will forget. One entry simply says, "They'll never thank us." But we were the ones who held it all together. You're not sure who they are, but it feels right. Historians still debate whether domestic labor, cooking, cleaning, childcare should be seen as cultural contribution. You think the answer is obvious. Without it, kingdoms crumble. Without it, the world ends one diaper at a time. You watch your daughter sleep and think. Maybe she'll grow up to read every word you never got to. Maybe she'll speak her truth and not apologize for it. Maybe she'll burn brighter than the world allows. And maybe, just maybe, she won't be punished for it. For now, you sleep, wrapped in the soft, smoky air of your small cottage. Tomorrow will come fast. It always does. Spring arrives like an apology. The air turns warmer, coaxing buds from brittle branches and color from your fingertips. You walk barefoot again. The earth is soft and damp beneath your toes, and for a moment, it feels like forgiveness. For what? You're not sure. Your doubts, your thoughts, your small rebellions maybe, but nature never asks. It just lets you breathe again. Your daughter grows taller. Her hair a tangled curtain of gold and stubbornness. She follows you everywhere, mimics your walk, echoes your hums. You watch her kneel by the herbs you planted last year, whispering to the time like it's listening. You smile. Maybe it is. The village feels lighter too. People emerge from their homes, blinking at the sunlight, dragging chairs and baskets and gossip out into the lanes. You trade pickled eggs for a wedge of hard cheese. You share laughter over chickens that won't stay penned and babies who chew on firewood. The weight isn't gone, but it's shared now. Fringe tidbit: spring festivals often included maying, when villagers danced around tall poles and snuck into the woods with partners. It was considered naughty, joyous, and completely inevitable. You didn't participate when you were younger. You were already married, but sometimes you wonder what it would have been like to run into the forest for want, not obligation. You hear of a young girl from a nearby village being married off to a man her father owes a debt to. She's only 12. Your chest tightens. You remember what that felt like. The way the world shifts under your feet and never quite goes back. You say nothing. Of course, it's not your place. It never was. Your husband becomes ill, not gravely, but enough to notice. He's quieter now, coughing more, taking longer to rise from the table. You tend to him, gently, efficiently, not out of love, but because someone has to. And because part of you still remembers the wedding feast, even if you wish you didn't. He thanks you once. You're so startled you nearly dropped the spoon. Historians still argue whether love existed in medieval marriages. Probably not at first, but sometimes it grew, like moss, slow and quiet, clinging to the damp parts of life. Maybe that's what this is. Or maybe it's just habit dressed up in kindness. You pray more now, not in church, but in the garden, with your hands in the dirt. You ask the saints to protect your children. You ask the old gods too, just in case. You're not fussy. Your daughter has started asking questions. Why are women not allowed to own land? Why do men never carry the water? Why does the priest always interrupt the women in the front row? You give her half answers, the safest ones. That's the way it's always been, you say, and it sounds hollow even to you. But inside, you cheer, quietly, carefully. One evening, she tells you she wants to be a healer, not a wife, not a mother. I want to make people feel better, she says. You press a kiss to her forehead and whisper, then you will. You don't add, if they let you. You remember your friend, the alewife. She was accused of witchcraft last year. A goat died. A man's rash didn't heal. That was enough. You watched her dragged from her home by angry hands and louder mouths. You don't know what happened to her. No one talks about her anymore. Fringe fact: many women healers used herbal remedies that worked well. Too well, apparently. Their knowledge was seen as dangerous. That's the thing about knowledge. It's only holy when men have it. You begin to teach your daughter in secret names of plants, which teas calm the blood, which roots help when the world becomes too heavy. She listens like it's gospel. She doesn't know she's inheriting your revolution. Historians often miss these things. The silent rebellions. The knowledge passed hand to hand like contraband. But this is how women have always survived. Through whispers, not wars. Your husband dies in late summer. It's not a grand affair. He goes quietly, breath by breath, like smoke leaving a shuttered room. You hold his hand at the end, not because he deserves it, but because you need to. He says your name, just once, like he's trying to remember something he forgot to give you. After the burial, the priest reads the usual blessings. Your neighbors nod and murmur. Your son stands tall beside you, trying not to cry. You don't cry either, not then. Later in the garden, you sob into the earth. Not for him, for the years. For the pieces of yourself you buried to survive. For the breath you finally get to take without bracing. You are a widow now. That word comes with power, surprisingly, more freedom than you've ever had. You can manage your household now, without permission. You can speak in gatherings and people listen somewhat. Still, freedom comes with caution. A single woman is a threat, a widow with a voice. Dangerous, but you speak anyway. You grow herbs for sale, teach girls to read. You make your own ale and sell it in jars marked with little wax seals. Your daughter presses herself. You're still poor, still judged, but no longer afraid. One night, your daughter crawls into bed with you and asks, "Will I ever have to marry?" You wrap your arms around her and say, "Only if you choose." You both know it might not be true, but some lies are just hope waiting to ripen. You don't realize how much the village watches you until you walk through it alone. Widowhood, for all its quiet perks, comes with a spotlight. You feel it in the stares, in the longer pauses between greetings. The women are gentler, the men strangely deferential or wary. It's hard to tell the difference sometimes. Your son takes over most of the heavier labor, though he still checks with you about everything. His voice has deepened, his hands are calloused, but when he hugs you, he still rests his head on your shoulder, like he did as a boy. You hold on just a second longer each time. The priest asks if you'll donate your late husband's tools to the church. You decline politely. You use them yourself now. You fix things. You mend fences, sharpen blades, carve handles. Your neighbors start coming to you instead of the blacksmith. It's not out of rebellion, just practicality. Fact: many widows in the Middle Ages ran businesses, farms, and households with surprising independence. The legal system still stacked the deck against them, but loopholes existed. You've learned to find the cracks in stone walls. Spring becomes summer, and with it comes the festival. You haven't danced in years. Your daughter drags you into the circle, and you stumble through the steps, laughing more than you have in months. You catch your breath against a tree, heart racing, cheeks flushed. A man offers you a drink. He's kind, too young, too cheerful. You thank him and wave him off. Not because you aren't tempted, but because this life you've rebuilt feels precarious. Like pottery that isn't fully fired. Better to let it harden before trying to paint it. You host gatherings now, quiet ones, for women, no men, no priests, no prying ears. You call it mending circle, but really, it's revolution in disguise. You teach stitching and steeping, but also speak of saints who disobeyed, and queens who ruled, and common girls who ran away and lived. Fringe fact: some historians believe that women used embroidery as code, sewing subversive messages into tapestries. Maybe it's just a theory, maybe not. Your gatherings grow, bread is shared, tears are too. A young wife confesses she thinks of running. An older woman admits she once did. Your daughter listens, eyes wide. You see her learning more in these evenings than any priest could teach in a lifetime. You start keeping a journal. You don't call it that. Just little notes, planting dates, names of women who helped others, words your mother once said. You keep it under a loose stone near the hearth, not because it's dangerous, but because it's yours. Your daughter bleeds for the first time in early autumn. She cries, not from pain, but fear. You cradle her and explain, not the church version, your version, about strength, about cycles, about power hidden in plain sight. Historians still debate whether medieval women saw menstruation as shameful or sacred. You decide it can be both, or neither. You decide your daughter will get to choose. She starts helping you more, knows which herbs to pick when fever hits, can tell a lie from truth just by watching a man's eyes. You see the shape of the woman she's becoming, not molded, grown. One morning, she tells you she wants to travel, to see the city, maybe even learn to write properly. You don't cry, not where she can see. You nod and say, "When you're ready." You know what it means to wait. The winter comes early that year. The snow is thicker. The dark arrives sooner. You spend long evenings by the fire, spinning wool, telling stories. Your daughter listens with her chin in her hands, still as a painting. One night, you speak of your own girlhood, of the man you almost loved, of the book you once found, the one with the pictures of plants and stars, of the dream you had once to become a midwife. You don't say it like regrets, just memories, softened at the edges. Your daughter falls asleep by the fire. You tuck a blanket around her, brush hair from her forehead, and you think, maybe that dream didn't die. Maybe it just changed shape. The next morning, she hands you a drawing. It's of you, in the garden, hair loose, hands deep in the soil, smiling. You don't recognize yourself at first. Then you do. You pin it beside the hearth, because sometimes daughters see the version of you that you forgot how to believe in. Autumn scrapes against your window like an old dog trying to come home. The air sharpens, smoke curls from rooftops. You wrap your shawl tighter as you step outside. The garden now more stem than bloom. The apples have fallen. The herbs are drying. Your bones creak like floorboards, but your steps are steady. Your daughter is taller than you now. She moves with purpose, talks with strangers, laughs with girls her age without flinching. You watch her hands, so like your own, as they gather, sort, stir, mend. She teaches the younger ones how to sew, how to listen to their bodies, how to tell when the old men in town are lying. One day, she tells you she no longer wants to marry. Not now. Maybe not ever. You nod, slow and solemn. But inside, the corners of your soul lift, because even if the world still snarls, she knows it's allowed to be questioned. Historical fact: widows in medieval Europe could sometimes own land or run businesses. Small cracks in the wall of patriarchy. You've found one of those cracks and dug your nails into it. Your fingers bleed, but it holds. You've begun writing, not letters, not prayers, not even spells, though your neighbor suspects. You write stories, small ones, pieces of truth shaped into fiction, a tale about a girl who saves her village with a brew of oak moss and nettle. Another about a queen who fakes her death to escape court life and live among her bees. You don't show them to anyone, but you keep writing. By candlelight, on parchment saved from fish wrappers and broken accounts. Your daughter catches you once and says, "These are good." You pretend to dismiss it, but that night you sleep easier. Fringe tidbit: some noble women in the 13th century kept personal books of hours, illuminated manuscripts with prayers, dreams, and sometimes doodles of cats stabbing knights. You'd add one too if you had the ink. The villagers call you wise woman now. You're not sure if it's praise or a warning, probably both. When a boy falls ill with coughing blood, they bring him to you. Not the priest, not the apothecary, you. You crush thyme and honey into a warm poultice and place it on his chest. You sing the lullaby your mother hummed when your own brother burned with fever. He lives. You become necessary, not liked by all, not safe exactly, but necessary. And that's enough. Historians still argue whether female folk healers were respected or merely tolerated. You think the truth's in the herbs, useful until they grow too strong. Your daughter begins to teach. She holds gatherings in the yard, talks about herbs, about history, about why St. Bridget might have just been an Irish goddess disguised as a nun. Some of the older villagers leave early, but the girls stay late. You catch glimpses of yourself in her, polished and bolder. She doesn't apologize before she speaks. She doesn't whisper when men enter the room. You watch her and feel something like regret and pride and rage at the world that made you choose between the two. Winter comes again, the fourth since your husband died. The world dims sooner each day. You and your daughter fill the silence with stories, sometimes old ones, sometimes the ones you wrote. You both laugh at the idea of noble virtue. You both cry at the story of the girl who lived in a tower and sang to the stars. One evening, a writer comes, rich cloak, clean boots, a scroll sealed in red wax. Your stomach knots. He carries a message from a cousin, distant, influential, and suddenly interested in your daughter. A match, he says, with a young lord. Generous estate, noble blood. You look at your daughter. Her lips press into a line sharp enough to cut. You thank the writer, feed him soup, and send him away with the dawn. The next day, you burn the scroll. Historical debate. Did all women lack choices? Some historians suggest a few noble women, like Eleanor of Aquitaine, defied norms and chose their fates. But those were exceptions, loud, dangerous exceptions. You've decided you'd rather your daughter be a quiet revolution. More writers come, some with flattery, some with threats, one with gold. You return it all, politely, then not so politely, then with a bucket of pig dung. Rumors begin that you're keeping your daughter for something dark, that you've made a pact with the forest spirits, that your dead husband haunts your garden. He doesn't. You checked. The priest pays a visit, speaks in gentle tones about obedience, about a woman's place, about Sodom. You make him tea and lace it with something that makes him forget half of what he came to say. You plant more garlic. It can't hurt. You start locking your door. You wake to scratches at the shutters sometimes. A chicken missing. A curse carved into your door frame. But your daughter is still here, still free. Some nights, the two of you sit by the fire and whisper lists. All the things you never got to do and all the things she still might. Dance barefoot on stone. Read every book. Learn to swim. Name a star. Grow old without apology. And always, always, live loud enough to be remembered. The garden sleeps again, but something beneath it stirs. You wake to frost on the inside of the window. It glitters like a warning. Outside, the trees stand naked, bones outlined against a pewter sky. Your joints ache. The kettle whistles. And somewhere, a dog barks in the distance. Sharp, uncertain. Your daughter is up before you. She's walking the perimeter, basket in hand, tracing symbols in the dirt with her boot. You taught her those patterns, some passed down, some invented, all half forbidden. There's talk in the village again, not just whispers now. A child had a seizure. The baker's cow gave birth to a calf with 2 legs. A nobleman's wife bled for 12 nights and didn't die. They say the world is out of balance, and women who read too much are to blame. Historical fact, in late medieval Europe, especially after the Black Death, superstition rose sharply. Women healers were often the scapegoats. If your tincture cured someone, it was divine. If it failed or succeeded too well, it was witchcraft. You go to market anyway. Your daughter insists on coming. The crowd is quiet as you pass. A boy crosses himself. An old woman bows. A man spits near your boot. The baker's wife, hands thick with flour, presses a bundle into your palm. Eggs, soft cheese, dried rosemary. "I saw what you did for Lillian," she says. "Thank you." You nod. Not everything rots. Not yet. But you feel it coming. Later that week, a magistrate arrives. His cloak is crisp, his beard trimmed, his eyes are too still. He asks questions, but not like someone who wants answers, more like someone confirming rumors. He asks if you've ever spoken to the dead. You say yes. Your husband mostly, usually to remind him where he left the axe. He doesn't laugh. Fringe tidbit. Some medieval courts considered laughter, especially by women, as signs of possession. Joy apparently was suspicious. He asks if you own a black cat. You say you used to. Then the priest ran over it with his cart. He still doesn't laugh. Your daughter says nothing, just stands there, arms crossed, gaze steady. When he leaves, he takes nothing. Not yet. But he says he'll return. That night, you bury your books, not out of fear, out of strategy. You dig beneath the elder tree, the roots like knotted hands. You whisper each title as if it were a prayer. The Book of Herbs, On the Movements of the Moon, Letters from Daughters of the Cloister. Your daughter adds one she wrote herself, on stories and songs and the power of listening. You cover them carefully, say you'll return for them someday, or someone will. Historians still argue whether the witch trials were about religion, property, or just plain misogyny. You think it was about fear of women who dared to know, of daughters who said no. One morning, a girl appears at your gate, eyes wide, lips trembling. Her father beat her for reading by candlelight. Her mother said nothing. She ran. You feed her soup, let her sleep. Later, she helps you in the garden. She doesn't say much, but her hands know how to pluck gently, how to carry without spilling. Soon others follow, some bruised, some angry, some just tired. Your home becomes a place of pause, a kind of liminal space between pain and possibility. You don't call it a refuge. That's too grand, too permanent. You just say, you can rest here if you need to. Your daughter sets rules. No questions on the first night. No chores if you're bleeding. And if someone brings you a poem, you read it aloud. Evening becomes storytelling time. Not just fairy tales now, but the real ones. Of narrow escapes and clever tricks. Of grandmothers who whispered spells through teeth stained with nettle tea. Of dreams carried like stones in pockets. You start keeping a list, not of names, too risky, but of small miracles. A baby's fever breaks after 2 nights with a fennel poultice. A girl finds her voice again, hoarse but firm. One woman finally sleeps a full night without waking from old screams. You pin the list behind the pantry door. Winter deepens. The snows come. You run low on honey, low on patience, but not on courage. Your daughter teaches them how to layer wool, how to blend dried yarrow with crushed sage. She teaches them how to hold a knife, not in fear, but with certainty. You realize she's no longer your shadow. She's her own fire now. Historical debate. Were medieval women's communities truly matriarchal in spirit, or just survival-driven collectives? Hard to say. But you know this much. What you've built wouldn't survive with only one leader. It needs all of you. Then one night, you wake to shouting. The magistrate has returned, not alone. Men in armor, torches, a priest with red eyes. They break the gate, drag out the girl with the bruises, accuse her of poisoning the well. You step forward, say it was you. They laugh, say women lie like they bleed, too much and without reason. Your daughter steps forward too, then the girl, then the baker's wife. And suddenly, your small yard is full of women, lanterns held high, shoulders squared, voices loud even if shaking. You don't win. Not that night. They take the girl, but they leave you, for now. And the next morning, every door in the village is marked with a line of ash, your mark, as if to say, we see, we remember. You bury your fear next to the books. The roots keep it company. Section 11. The snow melts slowly this year. First, the hard-packed crust softens into slush. Then come the rivulets, threading down from hills, slipping past stone fences, pooling in wheel ruts. The thaw reveals things the winter kept quiet. Broken pots, bones, a long-forgotten pair of shoes stuffed with dried lavender, and mud. So much mud. You spend your mornings unclogging the gutter near the road. It's not your job, technically, but no one else seems to care if the water backs up. The village has grown quieter since the magistrate's visit. People nod without stopping. They keep their voices low, their shutters drawn tighter. Even the priest avoids your eye now. Your daughter, however, walks taller. She's cut her hair, says it gets in the way. She spends hours in the garden, turning soil, whispering to the roots like they're old friends. The other girls follow her lead. One starts making salves, another copies her handwriting. There's talk of building something, just a shed maybe, a place to store bandages and dried herbs. You let them plan. Historical fact, in medieval Europe, spring was often called the hungry gap. Last year's stores ran low, but the new crops hadn't matured. Many peasant families went days without solid food, relying on onion broth or fermented rye. You know how to make broth from almost anything. Roots, bark, even nettles if you dry them right. The trick, your daughter says, is roasting the garlic first. Otherwise, it tastes like punishment. One night, the wind carries music. Faint. Fiddles maybe. Someone celebrating. Not you. Not this house. Still the sound floats through the window and lingers. You're reminded of a fair from your own girlhood. Red ribbons, boiled sweets. A boy who kissed your wrist instead of your lips. His name was Thomas. Or maybe Thomas. Hard to remember. But you recall the way his breath fogged in the night air, how he said your eyes looked like storm clouds and didn't laugh afterward. That was before the marriage, before the first lost child, before grief became something you wore like a second bodice, tight, invisible, impossible to remove without ripping skin. You don't talk about him, not even with your daughter. Some stories are yours alone. Quirky tidbit. In parts of medieval France, it was common to tie a frog's leg around a grieving widow's wrist to absorb sorrow. Whether it worked is, less than confirmed. Back to the present. The baker's wife appears again, her face drawn tight. Her husband has fallen, a fever. She doesn't trust the village healer. She trusts you. You go. It's a long walk. Your boots are soaked by the time you arrive. The house smells of ash and lye soap and something sour. The baker's eyes are glazed. You recognize the look, like someone halfway between here and not. You don't promise to save him. That's never the promise. What you offer is comfort, cool cloths, a steady hand, the sound of someone humming in the next room. He makes it through the night, and in the morning, the baker's wife cries, not from relief, but from the unbearable act of hoping again. You let her cry. When you return home, your daughter has rearranged the pantry. Too many jars, she says. And no one ever finishes the mint. She's right. You throw out 3 jars of dust and relabel the rest. Historians still debate whether medieval households were matriarchal in practice, despite being patriarchal in law. You know this. When men disappeared into war, into madness, into drink, someone still had to hold the thread of daily life. That someone was almost always a woman. A week later, the girl who was taken, Merritt her name was, returns. Thin, quiet, but upright. No one expected it. She says nothing about where she was, but she lets your daughter wash her feet. And that's enough for now. That night, a candle flickers oddly in the wind. A draft, maybe, or something else. You feel it again. That edge of something not quite seen. A question brushing against the back of your neck. Why are we still here? Why did they let her go? No one knows. But the answer, whatever it is, feels precarious. You double the wards near the gate, hang rowan branches in the corners, bury iron nails beneath the threshold, just in case. Historical fact, many medieval women combine folk rituals with Christian iconography, hanging crosses beside herbs, whispering Latin over cups of yarrow tea. Faith wasn't a binary, it was a survival strategy. You dream that night of a fire, not a consuming one, but a controlled burn, purposeful, cleansing, the kind that clears space for growth. When you wake, the wind is gentle. The rain has stopped. In the clearing behind your home, someone has built a bench, rough-hewn, sturdy. No one claims it, but each morning, someone different sits there. Sometimes to cry, sometimes to write, once to sing. You sit there once too, just to feel the sun on your face. You don't need a throne. This will do. The sun rises earlier now. You wake to birdsong and the distant clatter of hooves, some merchant passing through, no doubt. Your daughter is already outside, hands buried deep in soil, coaxing stubborn shoots of chamomile into growth. She says she can hear them when the wind is quiet, tiny voices urging each other upward. You don't argue. You used to laugh at such things. Now you understand. Sometimes belief isn't about what's true. It's about what gives you the strength to stand up and start again. Life continues. Barely. But it does. One of the village boys breaks his arm falling from a tree. You're called to splint it. The bones are young and soft, pliable with pain. You wrap them gently, humming some half-forgotten lullaby as you work. The boy sniffs but doesn't cry. His mother weeps instead. You place a hand on her shoulder. Good break, you say. He'll mend stronger. Historical fact. In medieval medicine, it was believed that certain types of fractures were blessed if they occurred before puberty, evidence that the body was still willing to heal with grace. Quirky tidbit. Some midwives wore charms made of snail shells to bring calm to crying children. Whether the children stopped crying from magic or confusion is anyone's guess. You pass by the old abbey later that day. What's left of it anyway? A few walls, a sagging roof. The rest is memory and moss. Once it held 20 sisters. Now it holds silence. But someone's been inside. You find flower petals arranged in a spiral near the altar, a circle of red, blue, and yellow, wild poppy, cornflower, tansy. A small clay figure sits at the center, faceless, arms open. You don't disturb it. Some offerings are meant to stay untouched. Your daughter follows your gaze. She looks like you, she says. You smile. No, you reply. She looks like all of us. Historians still argue whether female-centered ritual spaces, separate from formal church control, existed on the margins of medieval villages. But if they did, they likely looked like this: quiet, weathered, sacred, in the way a scar is sacred. Back home, you begin sorting through old books, pages curling, ink faded. One holds a recipe for a honey and leek balm. Another, prayers scratched between herbs and harvest dates. At the very back, you find a note in your mother's handwriting: protect what grows, even in the dark. You trace the letters with your finger. She wrote it before she died. Perhaps when she still believed you would inherit something besides sorrow. The fire crackles. Your daughter adds another log, then settles beside you. She's mending a cloak. Her stitches are uneven, but the thread holds. That's enough. You tell her about your mother's note. She nods, then says, "That's what you do, isn't it? Protect things." You laugh softly. "Not always. Not well." Still, she shrugs, pulling the thread. You try. The moon is full that night. You see shapes in the mist, figures between trees, the hush of many footsteps not quite touching earth. You don't wake your daughter. She'll hear them if they want her to. Instead, you listen. The wind carries voices. Some you recognize, others you never met. All women, all tired, all enduring. They do not ask for vengeance. They ask for memory. You whisper their names if you know them. Where you don't, you say, "Sister," and hope that's enough. The next morning, the village is restless. There's talk of a new lord arriving, young, unwed, foreign. They say he's bringing soldiers, that he'll want rent collected in coin, not grain, that his taxes will break the backs already bent. No one says the word riot, but it's there, hanging between teeth and tongues. You feel your bones tense, like they remember fire, like they expect to need it again. Your daughter says nothing, but she sharpens every blade in the house just in case. The merchant returns, this time with news. The noble's household includes a steward, a falconer, and 2 scribes. No women. Odd, but not unheard of. The steward visits your home. He's polite, too polite. That careful tone used for strangers who might curse you under their breath. He sees your herbs and asks no questions. He leaves with a salve for his master's aching joints and a bundle of sage he didn't ask for. You do not expect thanks. That night, you dream of feathers, a single black wing falling across the sky, of voices behind a door you can't open, of hands reaching upward, not to pull down, but to steady. You wake before dawn. The stars are still out. In the garden, your daughter stands barefoot in the dew. "He's coming today," she says. You nod. She doesn't say how she knows. Some things don't need saying. The Lord arrives at midday. He's pale, young, soft hands and hard eyes. He surveys the village like someone measuring a garment he never intends to wear. His men dismount. Their armor shines too brightly. They speak too loudly. They smell of wine and stale bread. The villagers bow. You do not. One of the soldiers notices, steps forward. Your daughter steps beside you. The air tightens, but the Lord waves the soldier off. He studies you a long moment, then speaks. "You're the healer," he says. You nod. "You'll serve my household when called." It's not a question. You say, "I serve those in need." He smiles. It doesn't reach his eyes. "Good," he says, and rides on. The village exhales. No one cheers. That night, your house is silent, but not afraid. The air feels heavier the next morning, not with storm, with waiting. The new Lord's banner now hangs outside the village hall, red and silver, a lion coiled around a crown, decorative, overcompensating, the kind of symbol men choose when they want to look more powerful than they feel. You don't like it. Neither does the village. Still, life resumes its pace, because it must. Bread must be baked, sheep must be sheared, infants must be soothed through colic and cradle cough. Even with change rattling the shutters, the chores don't stop. You head to the woods to gather valerian root. Your daughter insists on joining. The walk is long. but the silence between you is companionable. You find the patch beneath a twisted elm, roots like gnarled fingers clutching secrets. As you dig, your daughter hums something ancient, a melody without words. Maybe it's a prayer, maybe it's just a memory of one. You pause, brush a leaf from her brow. "Do you feel safe?" you ask. She shrugs. "I feel ready." Historical fact: valerian root was used as a sedative in medieval medicine, boiled into teas, chewed raw, or burned as incense. Some midwives even used it during childbirth, though it rarely worked miracles. Quirky tidbit: in one 14th century French village, there were laws banning women from entering council chambers with pockets, because some believed they could hide cursed herbs and cast spells with a flick of the wrist. You return to find a notice nailed to the chapel door. A new tax. For roads, they say. But there are no new roads. Your daughter reads it aloud, her voice even. You hear someone spit. The villagers gather that evening, not openly, but in the way people do when something's shifting. Eyes find one another across fences. Loaves are passed between hands like messages, and someone finally says it. "We've had enough." No one disagrees. The next day, the steward arrives at your cottage again. His smile is thinner. "The Lord is ill," he says. You nod, already gathering what you'll need. When you reach the manor, you're escorted into a chamber too lavish for someone who just raised your taxes. The air stinks of sweat and spoiled milk. The Lord lies propped on silks, shivering under layers. His skin is flushed, his lips pale. You place your fingers to his pulse. Weak, thready, still present. You ask about his water, his meals, his sleep. He answers curtly, irritated to need you. You administer a tea of feverfew, mint, and dried peach skin. He grimaces at the taste, but swallows it. "Will it cure me?" he asks. You meet his eyes. "It will help." He doesn't thank you. Instead, he says, "I'm told you're respected here." You say nothing. "I need that," he continues. "I need loyalty." You study him. This boy in a man's tunic. This boy who doesn't understand that loyalty isn't taken, it's earned. You say only, then act like someone worth it. Historians still argue whether medieval herbalists were granted authority by noble households or merely tolerated until feared. The truth likely falls somewhere in between. That night, you return home with aching feet and a heart like a clenched fist. Your daughter has lit every candle. The house glows. She says nothing, just hands you a bowl of lentil stew and waits. You eat in silence. Outside, the wind picks up. It sounds like laughter or crying. Hard to tell. In the days that follow, the Lord's fever breaks. Word spreads quickly. He recovers. You're summoned again, not for medicine, but for his mother. She's arrived from the coast. And she is not what you expect. Tall, wrapped in violet silk, a ring on every finger, eyes like sharpened glass. She thanks you, but not with warmth. "My son says you're clever," she says. "That makes you dangerous." You raise an eyebrow. Does he say the same of himself? She does not laugh. "You'll be watched." You nod. You already are. Later, your daughter snorts. "Well, she's lovely." You chuckle. "She's survived worse than us." Your daughter grows quiet. "Do you think I'll have to marry?" The question lands like a stone in water. You sigh. "Not if I can help it." "But what if you can't?" You pause. "Then I hope," you say softly, "that you choose someone you can laugh with. Someone who sees you as fire, not just warmth." She smiles. "That sounds impossible." You kiss her forehead. "Most good things are." That evening, The villagers leave small gifts at your door: bread, honey, a woven doll. No words, just gratitude. It feels like a warning, too, like they know you're walking a knife's edge. Still, you sleep soundly that night because for once the quiet isn't empty. It's full of whispers, of women, of something old stirring again beneath the soil. You wake to frost, not snow, just a thin silver skin on everything. On the windowsill, the bucket outside, the sleeping cat curled like a comma by the hearth. Your daughter's already up, grinding grain, her sleeves rolled, her hair pinned like a grown woman's. You make tea with dried rose hips. The petals float like tiny boats. Then comes the knock. Not the steward, a messenger. You're summoned, not to the manor, to the chapel. You take your herbs, your needle kit, your silence. Inside the chapel, the lady waits, the Lord's mother. She's seated in your pew. Of course she is. You greet her with a nod. She does not stand. "My son is healthy," she says. You incline your head, but restless. He needs purpose. He needs order. You wait. She fingers her rosary. "This village is a mess." You say nothing. "You've kept it stitched together," she continues. "That makes you useful." Historical fact. In some medieval communities, wise women and midwives were officially employed by parishes, half healer, half peacekeeper. They were paid in eggs, grain, or even housing. Quirky tidbit. One English village in the 1300s fined a midwife a goat for improper salt application. No one knows what that means. Historians are still trying to decode it. "I want a school," the lady says. That stops you. A school for the girls, for scripture, for sewing. You frown. And reading? She hesitates. If they must. You lean against the pew. Who will teach? You will. You almost laugh. I'm no scholar. You can read. You can think. That's close enough. She rises. You'll start next week, and you'll keep them from mischief. You tilt your head. That depends on your definition of mischief. She leaves you with the key to the vestry, to your past. That afternoon, your daughter helps you sweep out the space. Dust motes swirl like stars. A mouse darts under the altar. You trace the old stone walls. You remember hiding here once, when your husband shouted louder than usual. You were younger then, and so afraid. But now you feel something different. Not power, not quite, but maybe the beginning of it. You teach your first lesson 3 days later. 6 girls, ages 5 to 15, all curious, all fidgety. You show them letters carved in ash. A is for apple, B is for bread, C is for courage. You sneak that one in. One girl, Isla, can already read. Another, May, draws flowers in every margin. You let her. You teach them herbs too. How to identify yarrow. How to dry lavender without losing the scent. You teach them to listen when plants speak, because some do, in their own stubborn way. Your daughter watches from the doorway, smiling. Later she asks, "Do you like it?" You pause. "I think," you say slowly. "This is the closest I've ever felt to safety." Historians still argue whether rural education for girls in the 14th century was real or romanticized. The records are patchy, but some letters kept safe in abbey walls suggest it happened more often than we once believed. The season turns. The Lord visits once, stands in the doorway, watches the girls chant the Psalms. He says nothing, then nods, and leaves. You suspect it's the most approval you'll ever get. And yet, it's enough. Your hands stay busy, your mind sharper. You feel the years stretching both ahead and behind you, less like a weight, more like a garment you've finally grown into. One morning, you wake to find a basket outside your door. Books, Latin, French, even some poems. No note. You know who sent them. You hold one close. Smells like beeswax and old ink. Then you place it on the shelf. You've got girls to teach. You wake to silence, not the uneasy kind, but the sacred kind, the kind that settles over stone walls before anyone stirs. That soft velvet hush before a day begins. The coals in the hearth are still warm. Your cat, old now, curls tighter under the bench. You wrap a shawl around your shoulders and step outside. Mist clings to the grass. The trees drip faintly. There's a basket at your door. More books. Another volume of saints' lives. A primer in Latin. A torn psalter, its spine stitched with red thread. No note, but you know. You carry it inside. Light the candle. Run your fingers along the edge of the pages. That afternoon, 6 girls crowd around the new texts. May traces each letter like it's a path to somewhere better. Isla translates before you even ask. The little ones giggle at the pictures. You teach them Psalm 23, not because you must, because it speaks of valleys and fear and not being alone. You leave out the rod and staff. Focus on the green pastures part. Why do you always skip that line? Isla asks. You smile, because I'm still deciding how I feel about it. Historical fact, Psalm 23 was one of the most commonly memorized scriptures in medieval Christian households, often learned before children could write their own names. Quirky tidbit. Some medieval primers included illustration of animals performing human tasks, like a rabbit baking bread to help children memorize verses. Historians still debate whether these primers were widespread or rare treasures. You guide their hands through embroidery next. Each stitch, you say, is like a sentence. May naturally begins stitching flowers. Isla sews the letter C. What's that for, you ask? Courage, she answers. Like you said. You glance out the window. The fields beyond the village shimmer gold. Harvest nears. Your daughter arrives with baskets, apples, dried thyme. The Lord's mother wants a new tonic for sleep. You raise a brow. Tell her I recommend prayer. That night, as the candles burn low, you sit in the vestry alone. The room smells of ink and lavender. You open one of the books, an old French poem. You don't understand every word, but the rhythm is familiar, like heartbeat, like breathing. You imagine the scribe who once held this page, the woman who once whispered it to a child. You whisper it now. And for once, you're not afraid of your own voice. You sit still, breathing in the hush. The last flicker of fire pulses in the hearth, dim, golden, steady. Shadows stretch long across the walls, like they're trying to remember the stories they used to hold. Outside, the air is velvet with quiet. No birds, no breeze, just the soft weight of night. You move through the room slowly, almost reverently. The stool where Isla sat, the corner where May dropped her spool. Every item hums with use, with memory, with presence. The books rest in stacks by the wall. Their pages no longer flutter. Their voices, like yours, have grown sleepy. And beneath it all, you feel them. The ones who were here before you. Midwives, spinsters, mothers, girls who never grew old, women who hummed to themselves to stay brave, women who taught and healed and held the weight no one saw. They do not haunt, they bless. They linger in the creak of wood, in the weight of blankets, in the smell of rosemary dried and tucked into the rafters. They live in the gestures you no longer think about, the way you stir tea, the way you hum before sleep. You've joined them now, not because you tried to be anything more than yourself, but because you stayed, because you listened, because you kept going. And that is enough. The cat settles in your lap. Its breath is slow. You match it. Your shoulders drop. Your mind loosens. The world outside can wait. The dawn will rise, and with it, the questions, the porridge, the need. But tonight, there is none of that. Only warmth, only quiet. Let your mind drift now, through twilight gardens and rain-kissed hills, through everything gentle and green and far from worry. Let it rest where it wants. You've done well. Now close your eyes and sleep.